Hello everyone, welcome to our channel. In our last video, we walked through 2021 Economics WAEC GCE past questions from number 1 to 25. Today, we are continuing with the questions 26 to 50. I will be sharing you each question one by one, going through the options and giving you the correct answer with a simple explanation so you can understand it easily. If you are preparing for your WAEC or GCE exams, make sure you watch carefully, take notes, and of course, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Let's dive right in. Question 26. The determinants of the population growth rate of any country are dash. The determinants of the population growth rate of any country are dash. Option A, birth rate, death rate, and emigration. Option B, birth rate, death rate, and immigration. Option C, birth rate, death rate, and net migration. Option D, net migration, death rate, and urbanization. The correct answer to the question is option C, birth rate, death rate, and migration. Population growth depends on the number of births, the number of deaths, and net migration, people coming in minus people leaving the country. Question 27. A trade union has a lower bargaining power when dash. A trade union has a lower bargaining power when dash. Option A, marginal productivity of labor is highest. B, there is an excess demand for labor. C, there is an excess supply of labor. And D, labor-intensive production is the only option. The correct answer is option C. There is an excess supply of labor. That is, a trade union is weak when there are too many workers available because employers can easily replace them. Next question 28. Agricultural production in West Africa will increase if government dash. Agricultural production in West Africa will increase if government dash. Option A, establish more schools in rural areas. B, reduce subsidies in farm inputs. Reduce subsidies on farm inputs. C, allow communities to control their land. And D, pursue integrated rural development. The correct answer is option D, pursue integrated rural development. Agricultural production in West Africa will increase if government develop rural areas by providing things like good roads, storage, loans, and farm support. Question 29. A steel rolling mill is best sited close to dash. A steel rolling mill is best sited close to dash. A, water supply. B, market for the community. C, cheap power supply. And D, cheap labor supply. The correct answer to this question is option C, cheap power supply, because a steel rolling mill should be built close to cheap power supply, because it uses a lot of electricity to run. Question 30. A benefit of import substitution strategy is that it will dash. A benefit of import substitution strategy is that it will dash. A, encourage people to consume imported goods. B, worsen a country's terms of trade. C, reduce the volume of foreign investment in a country. And D, enhance a favorable balance of payment. The correct answer is D. It enhances a favorable balance of payments. Import substitution helps a country's balance of payment because producing goods locally reduces imports and saves foreign exchange. Question 31. What must be done to gross national product at market prices to arrive at net national product? What must be done to gross national product at market prices to arrive at net national product at market prices? A, add depreciation. B, subtract depreciation. C, add net exports, and D. divide by population. The correct answer to the question is option C, subtract depreciation. That is, to get net national product from gross national product, we subtract depreciation since it accounts for the wear and tear of capital. Question 32. Other things being equal, with significant increase in exports, a country's gross domestic product will dash. Other things being equal, with significant increase in exports, a country's gross domestic product will dash. A. Decrease. B. Rise. C. Fluctuate. D. Remain unchanged. This question was also asked in 2020 GCE question. So let's see the correct answer. Option B is the correct option. So why is it so? Why is it that we must GDP will rise? The reason is that when exports increase, the country sells more goods abroad, bringing in more money, so GDP will rise. I hope that is taken. Okay, let's go to question 33. A nation will calculate a gross national product so as to dash. A nation will calculate a gross national product so as to dash. A. Know the number of our citizens abroad. B. Determine the size of our population. C. Compare our standard of living with others. And D. Be able to correct our unfavorable balance of trade. The correct answer to this question is C. Compare a standard of living with others. That is, a nation calculates GDP to know the total income of its people, and when divided by population, it helps compare a standard of living with other countries. Question 34. Which of the following factors can lead to cost-push inflation? Increase in subsidies on goods, wartime spending, increase in income of workers, increase in personal income tax. The correct answer is option C, increase in income of workers. Increase in workers' salary can cause cost-push inflation because increase in workers' salaries will increase cost, which makes prices of goods to rise. 5. If members of a community refuse to accept their currency in transactions, if members of a community refuse to accept their currency in transactions, then dash. A. The value of money has increased. B. The community prefers trade by barter. C. The currency being used is relatively scarce. And D. Money has failed in performing its functions. The correct answer is option D. Money has failed in performing its function. If people refuse to accept their currency, then the money has failed in it maintaining its duty. Okay, if people refuse to accept their currency, that means that the money there has failed to maintain its duty of being a medium of exchange. Remember, we said that money is a medium of exchange, and if people refuse to accept such currency, means that that money has failed to meet up with its duty or responsibility. Question 36. A country will budget for a surplus in a particular year when it wants to dash. A country will budget for a surplus in a particular year when it wants to dash. A. Reduce aggregate spending to curb inflation. B. Increase total spending to boost employment. C. Finance large projects beyond its capacity. And D. Increase disposable incomes of workers. The correct answer is option A. Reduce aggregate spending to curb inflation. A country will budget for a surplus in a particular year when it wants to reduce aggregate spending to curb inflation. So a country's budget for surplus when it wants to reduce overall spending in order to control inflation. Okay? Question 37. Interest rates charged on loan by commercial banks are mainly influenced by dash. Interest rates charged on loan by commercial banks are mainly influenced by dash. A. Level of income in the society. B. Exchange rate. C. Bank rate. D. Liquidity ratio. The correct answer is option C. The interest rate bank charge on loans depend mainly on the bank rate, which is the rate the central bank charges them. Okay, so option C is the correct answer. 38. What is the effect of an increase in the cash deposit ratio by the central bank? What is the effect of an increase in the cash deposit ratio by the central bank? A. Commercial banks' reserves with the central bank is reduced. So let me repeat that again. Commercial banks' reserves with the central bank is reduced. B. Commercial banks' customers are encouraged to deposit more money. C. Commercial banks will keep a higher percentage of their deposit as reserve. And D. The lending power of commercial bank is raised. The correct answer to the question is option C. Commercial banks will keep a higher percentage of their deposit as reserve. So when the central bank raises the cash deposit ratio, commercial bank must keep more of their deposit as reserve, which reduces how much they can lend. Next question, question 39. The final burden of an excise tax on a good with perfectly inelastic demand is dash. The final burden of an excise tax on a good with perfectly inelastic demand is dash. A. On the producer only. B. On the consumer only. C. On both the consumer and producer. And D. More on the producer than on the consumer. The correct answer to the question is B. On the consumer only. Remember, I said the final burden of an excise tax on a good with perfectly inelastic demand is on the consumer only. That is, if demand is perfectly inelastic, consumers cannot reduce quantity demanded, so they bear the full burden of the excise duty. Question 40. One effect of increased borrowing by the government from commercial banks is One effect of increased borrowing by the government from the commercial banks is that dash. A. Investment resources will flow out of the country. B. External loans will be difficult to obtain. And C. Banks will be deprived of foreign exchange. And D. The private sector will be deprived of funds for investment. The correct option is D. The private sector will be deprived of funds for investment. Yes, exactly. When the government borrows heavily from the commercial bank, it reduces the funds available for private investors. This type of situation is also known as crowding out. When government borrows from the commercial banks, the money that would have been available for individual investors to borrow will no longer be there. So this situation is called crowding out. Question 41. Which of the following is not associated with a country that has experienced economic development? Which of the following is not associated with a country that has experienced economic development? A. High GNP per head. B. High employment. C. High infant mortality rate. And D. High literacy rate. The correct answer is option C. High infant mortality rate. That is, a country that has achieved real economic development usually shows higher GNP per head, usually have high employment rate and high literacy rate, but infant mortality falls significantly due to better healthcare and living standard. So high infant mortality rate is the odd out of these options. So that option C is the correct answer. Question 42. A country that is undergoing economic development also experiences dash. A country that is undergoing economic development also experiences dash. A. High rate of urban-rural migration. B. an increase in agricultural activities. C. A high birth rate and death rate. And D. An increase in per capita income. The correct answer is option D. An increase in per capita income. Economic development means that the wealth of a nation is not just growing in total, but also being shared among its people, leading to higher per capita income. Question 43. Other things being equal, a deterioration in the terms of trade of a country means that dash. Other things being equal, a deterioration in the terms of trade of a country means that dash. A. Volume of exports have risen. B. Volume of import have risen. C. Import prices have fallen. And D. Export prices have fallen. This is a repeated question from 2020 WAEC GCE past questions. Now let's look at the correct answer. The correct answer is option D. Export prices have fallen. Terms of trade measures the ratio of a country's export prices to its import prices. So if the term of trade deteriorates, it means the country now earns less from export relative to what it spends on imports. This usually happens when export prices falls or import prices rise. 44. In order to improve its current account in the balance of payment. In order to improve its current account in the balance of payment, a country must dash. A. Initiate measures to improve tourism in the country. B. Encourage non-foreign direct investment. C. Receive more long-term loans from abroad. And D. Encourage importation of foreign goods. The correct answer is A. In order to improve its current account in the balance of payment, a country must initiate measures to improve tourism in the country. Improving tourism brings more foreigners into the country, and when they spend money, it earns foreign exchange. Question 45. There has been little or no trade among West African countries because dash. There has been little or no trade among West African countries because A. They are all self-sufficient and need not trade. No. B. Goods produced by these countries are of high quality. They are primary producers and importers of finished goods. D. Their former colonial master will not allow trade. The correct answer to this question is option C. They are primary producers and importers of finished goods. So most West African countries produce the same raw materials and depend on importing finished goods. So they don't have much to trade with each other. Question 46. Selling a product cheaper in a foreign market than home market is dash. Selling a product cheaper in a foreign market than the home market is dash. A. Sales promotion. B. Dumping. C. Substitution. And D. Price discrimination. The correct answer is B. Dumping. Dumping means selling goods in another country at a lower price than they sell for at home country. 47. A benefit of the economic community of West African states to member countries is dash. A benefit of the economic community of West African states, that is ECOWAS, to member countries is dash. A. A reduction in government expenditures. B. An increase in the cost of living of the people. C. The conservation of foreign exchange. And D. The creation of wider market for commodities. The correct option is D. The creation of wider market for commodities. ECOWAS helps member countries to sell and buy goods more easily by creating a bigger market across West Africa. Question 48. Which of the following economic organizations was established to assist members to overcome balance of payment problems? Option A. African Development Bank. B. The World Bank. C. International Monetary Fund, and D. Economic Commission for Africa. The correct answer is option C, International Monetary Fund. The IMF helps countries that run short of foreign money by giving them loans to fix balance of payment problems. 49. Immobility of land in the geographical sense is applicable only to dash. Immobility of land in the geographical sense is applicable only to dash. A. All natural resources. B. Land as the earth's surface. C. Fishes in water bodies. And D. Vegetation and its products. The correct answer to this question is B. Land as the earth's surface. Land itself cannot be moved from one place to another, so it stays fixed in its location. So option B is the correct answer. And our last question for this very past question, that is 2021 WAEC GCE past question. The last objective question, that's question 50, says value added in the petroleum sector may increase if dash. Value added in the petroleum sector may increase if dash. A. More crude oil is exported. B. Refined petrol is imported. C. The petrochemical industry is well developed. And D. The products of the oil refineries are all exported. The correct option is C. The petrochemical industry is well developed. When crude oil is processed into other useful products like plastic, fertilizers, and chemicals, the country makes more money from it than just selling raw oil. Great job, everyone. We have just completed 2021 GCE Economics question. That is from question 26 to 50. I hope the explanation made everything clearer for you. Remember, the more you practice with past questions, the more confident you will become in the exam hall. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and of course, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss our next lesson. We will continue with more questions in the next video. Thanks for watching and see you next time.